Welcome in, everybody. Thursday edition of Morning Jox here. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell with you until the 7 o'clock hour when you hand you off to McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. And man, oh man, I'm glad I'm not an Arkansas fan. I really don't know how else to phrase it. You know, it I look outside this morning, Damien, and when we're coming into work, and it's going to be a little rainy this morning. It's not going to be ideal weather. It's a little, you can get a little down, and doesn't look promising outside. But then I just think, man, maybe it'll be a little bit of a rough morning, have to deal with some bad weather, and I think, man, is this what it's like to be an Arkansas fan and wake up every single day of your life, at least for the last 10 years or so, because they have had. They've had it just about as rough as anybody, and you can look around and, I think it even goes past baseball. I mean, you look at, what the football program has kind of become, and outside of one 9-win season, it's been rough, man. It's been rough if you're a Razorbacks fan. I know the basketball program, you made it to a few Elite Eights, and that's awesome, right? But you've never made it to that Final Four, right? You've knocked on the door, you've gotten right up to it multiple times now in the last decade, haven't been able to pull through. I think we all remember when, this is going back to football. You remember when they were watching the Polar Express in the locker room
Yeah.
a couple years ago? Like, there's just been things that come out, and if you're an Arkansas fan, you probably just, you're probably immune to it now, but also, like, it hurts.
It hurts.
It still hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
And last night, you've had this great train of momentum now after what Gage Wood did and throwing the no-hitter, and you're able to eliminate UCLA. And now you're going to get a rematch against the LSU team that's, had your number. But it felt like the momentum was on Arkansas' side, right? And so you knew last night it was a must-win game for the Razorbacks. You win last night, sets up a winner-take-all game tonight. You lose. Season's over. LSU is going to find themselves in the College World Series Finals. So last night you did have that game, and it started off not like we expected. It was a pitcher's duel for a lot of the game, really until about the 8th inning or so. So you had Helfrich, who hit a solo shot for Arkansas there in the 4th. That made it 1-0. Woo Pig Suey. Then you had LSU, who came back with a bases loaded single in the top or the bottom of the 6th there. That was a 2-run single, made it 2-1 LSU. Okay. So then you had a situation for Arkansas where Helfrich was actually the guy again. And he didn't hit a home run this time, but he just put the ball in play, had a bases loaded situation, made LSU make a play. First baseman makes an error, and you end up scoring 2 there off of an error for LSU in the 8th inning. So Arkansas, they go up 3-2. Well, as destiny, fate, whatever you want to call it, would have it, the first baseman, Jason Jones, who was the guy that had the error that allowed Arkansas to score those multiple runs there in the 8th inning, he's at the plate in the bottom of the 8th. So what happens? Boom, hits a solo shot, absolutely makes up for his miscues in the field, ties it up at 3. You then have a situation where you go to the top of the 9th. Arkansas able to get some action going on the bases. You get a big RBI single from Thomas right under the third baseman's glove. That drives home a couple. So now you're sitting there with a 5-3 lead going into the bottom of the 9th. You feel pretty good if you're Arkansas, right? The momentum is back on your side. Unfortunately, it wouldn't last, though. So it's 5-3 going into the bottom of the 9th. LSU would hit a 2-run double to make it 5-5, which would then set up Mr. Jones yet again, who had played hero earlier in the game. So he has the error at first base. That allows Arkansas to score 2, make it 3-2. Then he comes up in the bottom of the 8th, hits a home run to tie the game. Now here he is again in the bottom of the 9th with an opportunity, 5-5 ball game, to send LSU to the College World Series Finals. And this is how it sounded on ESPN. So Jared Jones, as you heard there, the first baseman for LSU, he rips a line drive. I mean, 2 inches lower, 3 inches lower, and it's an out, and it's an incredible play, and we're going to extra innings. But just a little bit too much juice on the hit, and second baseman needed to grow a couple inches, and maybe you would have had a play there. But LSU, they walk it off 6-5. Jared Jones gets to be the hero a couple of times late in this game, and more just absolute disaster for LSU because what presided this, if you weren't able to watch the game, so you actually had two miscues. So there's two guys for Arkansas that are absolutely going to be kicking themselves. So one is going to be Wahiwa Aloy, who was the SEC Player of the Year. He was one of the finalists for the Golden Spikes Awards. So he was essentially one of the three best players in college baseball this year. At least that's what the voters are telling you. So you had a situation where you had guys on first and second and one out, and a ground ball is hit to the shortstop. And for whatever reason, Aloy decides that he's going to go get the lead runner at third base, which, I mean, in certain circumstances is a smart baseball play. Maybe he thought the game was tied, right? Maybe he thinks that, one run is all the LSU needs to get across, not two. But it's one of those things where you can't convince me that wasn't the heat is on, the pressure is on, and you just have a brain fart in a critical moment. You do not. It's not the ball wasn't carrying him to third base where that was where his momentum was carrying him. That was the way that he was positioned. You flip your hips, you flip it to the second baseman. He goes to first. You had an excellent shot at turning two.
And to your point, and I thought about it instantly. I was like, well, the ball didn't necessarily lead him to third. Like,
nope.
I was thinking, all right, you hit the second, like you said, you flip your hips, hit the second base, and if it's a bang bang play on first, so be it. But when it was almost like he didn't have a sense of urgency even when he was going to third. So I'm thinking like, oh, maybe he's trying to get a quick one and just to see what could happen. But you put yourself in the same exact situation for the next batter to come up, and I'm with you. I think it was kind of a heat of the moment decision where he's like, let me just get the easiest out. And it's right there at third. But the situation tells you, it presented to you that, man, you can turn two. If you don't think that, the throw from second to first is going to get there in time, okay, that's not really your call. But a quick flip of the hips, going to second, and let's just see what happens if you turn two. You never know. And then for what happened the next play, it's like, man, you had an opportunity before to get yourself out of this situation.
Yes. And so that, again, is where you're going to go back and really analyze the missed opportunity there on the double play for Arkansas because of what would come afterwards. So you miss the double play. You get the guy at third. Granted, the runner at third doesn't matter because you're up by 2, so you let him score all day. You're not worried about him. But, that it is what it is. So now you sit there with 2 outs. You've got runners at the corners. And then you have a rocket that's sent to left field and brings in a pair of runners there to tie things for LSU. And you feel so bad for the left fielder for Arkansas because, I mean, to be fair, the ball that was hit to left field, I mean, it was a little tricky, right? Like he didn't read it very well, clearly. And look, I understand, your first step's always backwards and then you can make it up, blah, blah, blah. But it was an obvious, it was a line drive. He was going to have to charge it. I think he was expecting to have to dive to catch it. And then maybe he realized, oh, I actually don't have to dive to catch it. And he was kind of in this awkward place between, maybe his body trying to dive and his mind trying to hold him back. And so essentially the left fielder for Arkansas slips, falls, and the ball goes. It looked like it went off his shoulder, honestly. It probably hurt. But in the moment, the adrenaline's pumping because you're like, oh my God, I might have just lost us this game. And unfortunately, that's kind of how it goes. So the ball, skips to the down to the warning track down there in the left field corner. 2-run score for LSU, and then that sets up the Jared Jones walk-off that you heard there just a minute ago. So definitely gives you shades of 2018. If you remember, Arkansas 1 out away from winning it all. They were in the finals at that point playing Oregon State. and you had a pop-up in foul territory that would have won you the College World Series. It's a play that, you're going to make 99 out of 100 times when you're a top-level college baseball player. And the one time that they miss it, that's what happens. Oregon State came back that game, won that game, and then came back and won game 3 after that. So, unfortunately for Arkansas, it's been really tough sledding for them here in recent memory in Omaha. But, yeah, that's just the way that it goes, unfortunately for Arkansas. So LSU, they advance. So we do have SEC representation in the finals this weekend, Damian. They're going to get underway on Friday. And so we will see what is in store there, because you're going to have LSU taking on Coastal Carolina, because Coastal Carolina absolutely smoked Louisville yesterday in the early game, 11-3. So they have now won 26 games in a row if you were keeping score at home, which is just absolutely absurd. They showed I saw a graphic yesterday. It was the largest winning streak entering the championship series in Omaha. The record was 18. It is now 26.
Oh boy.
So that is quite good. Also, I misspoke. The series starts on Saturday. My bad. Not Friday night. It is Saturday night at 6:00. But you will have Coastal Carolina and LSU doing battle there up in Omaha starting Saturday. And, of course, you'll have Saturday, Sunday. And if they split, then you'll have a winner-take-all situation coming up for you on Monday there. So have to give props to Landrum Roberts. Landrum, about 3 weeks ago, he said, I think it's going to be Coastal and LSU.
Wow.
So good for props to Landrum. He called this.
So if you're an Auburn fan, are you rooting for Coastal?
Coastal. You're
rooting for Coastal. Because, they knocked you out, and then you might as well lose.
You want to lose to the best team, right?
Right. I was just wondering if it was, the SEC brethren, would they, get locked in arms?
No,
that's not how it goes.
I think that mentality is maybe a little over it. Look, if you genuinely feel that way, more power to you.
Just asking.
I'm just saying.
You know me, I'm just a big SEC guy.
No,
So
I know.
I thought everybody had love for, the conference. We're sitting here, talking about getting 4 automatic qualifiers in the college football playoff, and then I thought, you keep that same love across all sports.
No.
Interesting.
No. Again, look, if anybody out there genuinely feels that way, such as you, Damian, I appreciate that. But I think a lot of people out there, I just root for the SEC. Do you really? Do you really want LSU to win something? Do you really want that to happen? Do we really want Texas to win things?
It's good representation, though.
Yeah. Now, you know what? Yeah, we'll throw a bone to Vanderbilt all the time. Now, Unfortunately, Alabama had to throw them a bone last year, but it
also
it is what it is.
Have you watched the whole interview of Bussin' with the Boys with Diego Pavia?
I haven't watched all of it.
He's an interesting fella.
Yes, he is.
There's a border we could talk about this later, but there's almost a thin line of, confidence and just absolute just crazy. He legitimately believes in his heart of heart that him individually has enough talent to take Vanderbilt to a national title.
Yeah, he also thinks that Vanderbilt has the most NIL of any school in the country. So I just look, and again, I'm with you. I like the confidence to a certain degree, but then there's a certain point where you're just saying stuff
right
for the sake of saying stuff, and we all see through it, and it's like
there's no way you believe this.
Yeah, but I think in his mind he's like, no one's gonna call me out on this, or no one's gonna recognize what
right.
It's like, I mean, look, I'm glad you like Vanderbilt. I'm glad you're happy to be there, but they don't have the most NIL. And again, like we briefly touched on yesterday, if somebody offered you $4 million to transfer and you turned them down, you're a moron. So
right to stay at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, sorry, I don't. You could go back and get your master's after your year. Yeah,
right.
I'm sorry. No, I don't. But yeah, that's a whole nother thing. He's having himself quite a week with some of the stuff that's coming out on social media. But hey, it was an entertaining interview there to say the least. So that's your recap from Omaha last night. Absolutely wild game between Arkansas and LSU. You feel so bad for Razorback fans. It's been absolutely brutal. And so we asked the question, who's had it worse over the last 10 years than Arkansas baseball? Is there another fan base Maybe just Arkansas on a whole. Is there another fan base in the SEC that you think over the last decade has had it worse than the Hogs? We would love to hear from you, 205-834-9450. We do have some more make or break games for teams in the SEC. We're going to hit on LSU, Florida, and maybe the Tennessee Volunteers today. If not, we'll save it for tomorrow. But that's coming up as well. So a lot left to get to. All that next here on Morning Jox on Jox. 620, welcome back in. Morning Jocks, Conrad and Damian here with you. Know a lot of you probably off work today, so I hope you enjoy that. Stay aware with some rain we're expecting to have here around the Birmingham area this morning, and hopefully it'll clear out pretty quickly because you do have a pretty cool event today going on over at Rickwood Field. If you are one of the people that's off work and you looking for something to do around the Magic City today, I know tickets are only $12, but they have the East-West Classic going on at Rickwood Field a little after lunchtime today. I know they also have a home run derby that they're hosting before that, but you're going to have, CC Sabathia, Andrew Jones, Gary Sheffield, the Upton brothers, Matt Kemp. I'm trying to remember some of the other names. There were just, if you grew up watching baseball, especially, in like the middle 2000s, that kind of time period, a lot of very, very recognizable names. So going to be very cool to see them here in Birmingham at Rickwood Field. So that event is going on a little bit later today at 1 o'clock is the scheduled start there for the East-West Classic from Rickwood Field. And so keeping on with the baseball theme here, we have the College World Series, we have Rickwood Field, and you also have the Atlanta Braves. So quickly, last night, Atlanta, they are taking on the Mets, and Atlanta taking care of business 5-0. They shut out the New York Mets in large part to Chris Sale, who was so good yet again last night for Atlanta. He goes 8 2/3 innings, 5 hits, no runs, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk through 116 pitches for the Bravos last night. So he continues to look like the same pitcher that won the Cy Young Award last year in the National League. I believe since the start of May, I saw his ERA is 1.
That's good.
That is very good.
That's good. We'll take that.
That will certainly play. But you had Ronald Acuna. He scores, hits a home run there to lead things off in the first inning for Atlanta. You had Verdugo, who was able to score on an error. Ozuna hits a sac fly, so you're up 3-0 after the first. Matt Olson would add on a solo shot later on in the game. So Atlanta, they get the 5-0 win. You're now 33-39. So we're, moving on up slowly but surely in the Major League Baseball standings. So Atlanta, 11 games back in the National League East, but in the wild card, you do find yourselves 5.5 games back. So again, you're making some progress there. So Atlanta, they will finish off their series against the Mets tonight. That's going to be a 6:15 first pitch against the New York Mets, and you now have after this series, you're going to have the Marlins, the Phillies, and then guess what? The Mets again. So still a lot of opportunity here for Atlanta as they are kind of chugging along here in the heading into the All-Star break time period. So we also had this was some big news yesterday that I wanted to talk about, and I know, Damon, you probably have some interesting thoughts on this as well. But this is, again, it's basketball, and not something that I had on my bingo card for this year. I think many people did, but we just had the largest sale of a professional sports franchise in the history of the United States of America yesterday. And I feel like, and I don't know, maybe it's just because we're in college football country, but I feel like, it hasn't really gotten as much of a reaction as I was expecting it to. A lot of people just, oh yeah, okay, they're selling the Lakers. Yeah, okay, yeah. Jeannie Buss is casually selling the Lakers for $10 billion. So that will be the largest sale of a professional sports franchise in the history of the United States, as I just said. So the Buss family bought the Lakers. Jerry Buss bought the Lakers back in 1979 for $67.5 million. It is now selling for $10 billion.
So I'd say the return on investment was what we would say outstanding.
That is over a 100 times return on your $67 million investment.
You love to see it.
That is just absolutely remarkable. So the franchise is being sold to Mark Walter, who, if you are familiar with some of the going-ons of the business side of Major League Baseball, who does he own?
That would be the LA Dodgers.
That would be correct, Damien. And as we all know, money is no obstacle for them, and money looks like it will be no obstacle for the Los Angeles Lakers as well. So this is certainly interesting from a standpoint of the Lakers are, you can't outbid them. So if they want somebody, they can do whatever they need to do to go and get these players. And you have maybe a couple years left with LeBron. I would say probably one or two, but you've got Luka. And, now, question turns to who are you going to go out to pair him with Luka for the foreseeable future? So it's going to be very interesting next couple of years there in Los Angeles with how this new ownership group kind of handles things and just how aggressive they want to be in free agency and things like that. But, I look at, obviously we bring up the Dodgers because he runs them, but you look at what a guy like Steve Cohen's done with the Mets, who essentially is just a billionaire and said, I want to make the Mets good. And so he's gone out and spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to make that happen. And he doesn't have a championship yet, but obviously, the Mets are one of the very best teams in baseball right now. And, you just kind of see what happens when you can just throw a blank check at players. And, a lot of times that's a very, can certainly sway some people's decision.
Yeah, and to your point, so you have LeBron James there for the next, say 2 max years. But think about the next decade for Luka in a Lakers uniform. 1, you're under new leadership. 2, the team just, again, 10, people need to understand $10 billion with a B dollars is insane. Like, it's absolutely insane. And when you look at, because the Boston Celtics were sold for $2 billion a little bit earlier this year.
I think it was, how much did this? It was more like $5
It was like, okay,
billion. It was a lot, but it's still like half of
it. Right, half of that. And you think of just iconic sports franchises, and none are more lucrative than what we just saw in this day and age with the Los Angeles Lakers, and a team that's had success for multiple seasons. But it kind of, like you said, it kind of shows you that there's no expense. If you got it, you've got it. And for the Buss family to have, if you've watched Winning Time, it's just to see how this team kind of just came together, and, a bunch of businessmen are just like, you know what? Dr. Buss was like, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll handle this, and we'll figure the rest out. And then to see the longevity of how much they've stayed in, just, even the lows, they've been low, but the highs have been literally NBA Finals, and the likes of Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, LeBron James, Shaq, just so many people have worn the purple and gold, and now looking forward towards the future, it's kind of like the Dodgers. It's, if we got the money for you and we think you're worth, our while, you'll be in the Lakers uniform. And now you're part of the richest franchise in sports history.
Yeah. So this is just wild news. Didn't expect that to come out yesterday, but Mark Walter is worth $6.1 billion. That is what his net worth is listed at currently. He is the CEO and chairman of the diversified holding company TWG Global, who have been stakeholders in the Lakers since 2021. And he, I guess his company, essentially, they manage roughly $325 billion worth of assets. He also has, he owns the Los Angeles Dodgers, but he also has investments in the Los Angeles Sparks of the WNBA, Chelsea from the Premier League, pretty big soccer club, the Professional Women's Hockey League. I didn't know that was a thing. And he also owns a couple of Formula One teams. So,
he's rich.
Yeah, so this is his, he just likes having sports teams, and these are his little hobbies. And
Wow.
So yes, as Damian just said, he is rich. So so Lakers under new ownership, the Buss family, they're going to hold on to, I think, 15% for a short period of time. They'll still have a minority share in the organization, but then we'll slowly phase out of that, and it will be a new regime there. Jeannie Buss is going to stay on. She'll still work in the front office and be a part of the organization, but not in quite the same way that she has been since her father passed away over a decade ago. So big news there. Los Angeles Lakers being sold for a record $10 billion, the largest sale of a professional sports team ever in the United States of America. Well, we've been having some fun here the last couple of days, if you've missed the show, looking at make or break games for teams in the SEC. So we've done Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, and Texas. So now I want to take a look at Florida and LSU for the upcoming season. So go ahead. If you have one in your mind, go ahead, 205-834-9450. You can text us at the Courtesy GMC text line who your make or break game is for LSU and Florida, and we will share our thoughts next here on Morning Jox. 6:35. Welcome back. Morning, Jox. Conrad and Damien here with you. Appreciate you joining us on your Thursday morning as we roll into some more make or break games from around the SEC. So if you have missed the show the last couple of days or have just missed this part of the show, we've done Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, and Texas. So today, Damien, we're going to look at LSU and Florida. So for me, LSU, I believe that their make or break game for the 2025 college football season is going to be in Oxford, Mississippi, when they have to travel over and take on Ole Miss in Week 5. And the reason for this is you have a Clemson team early on that, I'll be honest right now, I think Clemson's going to win that football game. You also have Florida in Week 3 to kick off SEC play for you there. It's kind of a weird schedule because then you have Southeastern Louisiana sandwiched in between them and Ole Miss. But I think depending on, again, I'm not projecting that this is how it's going to be, but it's not the most far-fetched thing in the world to see where LSU would be 2-2 going into this game against Ole Miss. Now, I'm not saying I'm projecting that. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. But losing to Clemson and a Florida team that, if they're as good as a lot of us are thinking they can be, I mean, those wouldn't be huge upsets there, right? So you could be 2-2 going into this game. Maybe you're 3-1 with a loss to Clemson. Yes, you could be undefeated. That's possible. But you look at Ole Miss, that's a game that, okay, you won last year after not leading at any point in regulation until the final play of overtime, and you win on a walk-off touchdown. Is this a game that you can bounce back against an Ole Miss team that we don't know is going to be as good as last year and get kind of a marquee win, get some momentum early on in the season for LSU? Because after that, you do have Alabama, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Oklahoma, South Carolina. You have some difficult games left on your schedule after that. And so there is a world where you are 2-3 after the Ole Miss game, and your season's essentially already over. But this game could be massive because, again, coming off of what I expect to be an early loss to Clemson in Week 1, you need to get that ball rolling because you do have some of these difficult matchups left in SEC play, and you don't want to find yourself with multiple losses in the first half of the year, and then you're like, okay, we have to play perfect football in order to make the playoff. So that just adds some more pressure. So I'm going Ole Miss Week 5 for LSU's make or break game.
Yep, and I agree with you 100%. And I think, coming out the gate with Clemson, and to me, I'm kind of – it's hard right now projecting how LSU can not necessarily find a way to get Clemson, but right now I think Clemson's just a better football team. I think what Cade Klubnik was for Clemson last year kind of erased all of the doubts that I had for him going into the season, and I think that he's closer to doubling down what he did last year than regressing back to what he came in as a quarterback. But also, that trip to Florida last year, Florida – they caught you at the right time. They got you at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for LSU, you have to establish some sort of identity in the run game to at least keep teams honest. Like, at least they ain't got to say, hey, secondary, y'all are going to be up, because Garrett Nussmeier is going to serve you up at least one throughout this game, so you need to be ready. But say they do find themselves, knocking off Clemson to start things off. That's a lot of momentum moving forward. And to your point, Ole Miss, you feel like you let that one get away last year. You had every opportunity to put them out of their misery and get the game over with. You let it go in overtime, and then boom, they go down there and score after you kick a field goal. So I think for LSU, that Ole Miss game is truly the turning point of the season. And to your point, if they do stumble out of the gate, their Ole Miss at that time is going to be one of the top teams in college football. You knock them off, you get a lot of your tougher games at home. So hitting the road, going to Oxford, you pull that one off. The rest of the schedule, you're kind of looking at, we get a bye week before we have to welcome, South Carolina. Vanderbilt, in Diego Pavia's mind, they're going to be ready, but I still think LSU should win that ball game. You got to get some revenge on Texas A&M. You got a bye week, and then you got to go to Bryant-Denny. So the schedule doesn't necessarily get easier after that Ole Miss game, but getting a win against Ole Miss kind of puts you in the, okay, well, at this point, we know what the job is the rest of this way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. but you at least have some sort of confidence after that Ole Miss matchup that, okay, we're in control of our own destiny early on in the season. And it kind of puts a little bit of the pressure on you that, hey, we cannot afford a slip up because we kind of had, we had two of the tougher teams to start the season off with Florida and Clemson, and then you mix in that Ole Miss matchup. But if you get that Ole Miss game, you kind of feel a little bit better about some of the opponents that you have on the backstretch.
No, I agree with what you just said there, and yeah, I mean, a lot of it just comes down to, right, that's a game you go into it. If you lose, you're, regardless of how it goes, either you already have 2 losses going in potentially, and so you're going to have to win in order to keep your playoff hopes alive, or you could lose this game, but at that point, you're then going to have to essentially play perfect football the rest of the way. So yeah, a lot on the line there for LSU as they will take on Ole Miss in Week 5. Now let's look at the Florida Gators. So for Florida, and again, there's a lot of big games that you could pick from, and I think there'll be some interesting responses to this one. But for the Gators, I actually went with their trip to College Station in Week 7 to take on Texas A&M, and the reason for that is because that comes off a stretch where you're going on the road to LSU, on the road at Miami, at home against Texas, and then on the road against Texas A&M. Those are 4 weeks in a row. You did get Mississippi State after that, but then you have Georgia right after it. So, I mean, that's just an absolute gauntlet where you're going to face 5 teams, in a 6-week stretch that could all reasonably be, top 15, top 20 teams in the country. And that's where a lot of that comes down to it for me is I just look at it as, again, this is a worst-case scenario, but there's a world where if you lose that Texas A&M game, that's your 4th loss in a row at that point, having lost to LSU, Miami, Texas, and Texas A&M. And then we're having a completely different conversation about this Florida team, and Billy Napier is probably scrambling for his job. Not to mention at that point, you do have Georgia left, you have Ole Miss left, you have Tennessee left. We don't know, maybe Florida State's going to be better. But at that point, we're then talking, can you just get to 6-6 and try to salvage this thing instead of, maybe going and winning 8 or 9 games like some people are hoping they can do, or maybe even more than that. So I'm going at Texas A&M in Week 7 just because of if you lose that game, I'm not confident that you've played a clear schedule up to that point because of how difficult those games are. But yeah, and there's a world out there where Florida is losing 4 straight games by the midway point of the season, and that would end with Texas A&M.
See, I'm agreeing. I agree with you as well because Florida, to me, they're almost in that South Carolina boat of, okay, how many teams did you catch by surprise last year? Where now you don't have that element of, oh man, this Florida team, okay, how physical are they going to be? Because I think that, okay, if you knock off LSU, great. If you go on the road and knock off Miami, even better. But realistically, I don't have Florida being as like the sleeper college football playoff, but I do think they're going to be better than what they were last year. And last year going into the season, it was, man, can Billy find a way to get 4 or 5? And now that we saw what they did last season, I think this year it's, okay, you may not be at the Texas level yet. You may not even be at the Ole Miss level yet. Now, you got them last year, but can you do that consistently? Have you gotten to that point? And I think Texas A&M is a good kind of gauge because if you go out there and handle your business on the road at College Station, then the rest of that schedule kind of looks like, okay, well, you saw what DJ Lagway was able to do against Georgia last year had he not gone down. How can you continue to trend in that upward direction? Because I don't think Florida's there consistently yet. But that Texas A&M game is kind of that, all right, well, we're not in the bottom dweller. We may not be at the top just yet, but we're trending that way. Because, I wouldn't be surprised if they lose to an LSU, they lose to Miami, they lose to a Texas. But if you find a way to sprinkle a win against one of those opponents, you're feeling pretty good. But that Texas A&M game, it's almost, can you go out there and handle business? Not necessarily, I'm not sitting here saying like they're going to blow them out. But if you beat them convincingly, the rest of that schedule looks like, man, okay, Ole Miss, they beat you last year. Can you follow it up? Georgia, you escaped by the skin of your teeth last year. Can you get them? Tennessee, how wounded are you? Because they made it interesting for you last year, and it kind of tells, like you say, make or break. it's kind of that pivotal point in the season where we know what it's very similar to LSU. We know what's at stake now moving forward. It's, hey, if we are going to be one of those teams that's going to be in the conversation of college football playoff, we've knocked off some pretty good teams. Let's see what happens. But I think that Texas A&M game, because last year Marcel Reed caught you by surprise because you've probably been preparing for Conor Rigman the entire offseason, and then they throw him in there. It's like, well, we didn't know they had this kind of juice.
Mm-hmm.
Now they know. Is Marcel Reed good enough to continue what he did last year? And is Florida going to still have that identity of being more physical? And also, when they need to take the top off, they got a quarterback that can do it.
So those are our thoughts. Make or break games for LSU and Florida. Your thoughts, 205-834-9450. Some of you on the phone line, some of you on the courtesy GMC text line. That's where we'll go next here on Morning Jox. Thursday edition of Morning Jox here. Conrad and Damian with you until we hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning coming up at the top of the hour. Quickly, let's go to the phone lines. We have some people that want to weigh in on the topics today. Let's go to Larry, who's on the road. How are we doing this morning, Larry?
Hey, guys. I always enjoy the show. I just wanted to mention something regarding LSU, guys. How many times do you see LSU, when the game's on the line, they always seem to make it happen? Do y'all agree? I mean, every time. I mean, how many times have they done it over the years? Even back during the Berkman, what was that, Coach Berkman at LSU that won all the championships? Is that his name?
Are you talking about baseball?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, they are incredible. It seems like, I mean, when you're up 5-3 going into the bottom of the ninth, I think a lot of people were saying, okay, well, LSU's going to have a pretty good chance at tying this game or even winning it. And that's exactly what they did. But yeah, no, Larry, they seem when they need somebody to step up, it seems like someone always steps up for LSU.
Just wanted to say something, guys. Back in the mid to late 70s, I played he was a baseball star at LSU, and he played in the movie with Adam Sandler. When Sandler played the quarter, what was it, longest yards? Papa John. We went to school at Vestavia back in the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
He played baseball at LSU, but I don't know if he was in any of those national championships. But I saw him at our 40-year reunion a few years back. But enjoy the show, guys. Thanks a lot.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Larry. Appreciate you. Appreciate you chiming in there. Yeah, you were thinking of Skip Bertman. That was the manager there for LSU that won 5 College World Series titles. Now let's go to Deacon in Tuscaloosa. How are we doing this morning, Deacon?
We're doing good, brother. This is day 2 of my Get Damian Rolling on the Tide train. I just want to let him know that just for historical reference, if he chooses Alabama this year, at least for 1 year, he'll be able to claim Namath. He'll be able to claim Stabler, Newsom, Hannah, all the names, all the history. And he will be able to say, at least for 1 year, he was a true dyed-in-the-wool fan of the greatest program in the history of college football. And also, I know money's not an issue, but Damian, just so you know, if you choose Alabama, the Deacon from Tuscaloosa will purchase your Roll Tide onesie. Y'all have a good day.
There we go, Deacon. That's what I'm talking about. Good luck on your Vanderbilt hole. Hope that one, your new one for this upcoming season.
That's some good recruiting right there, dog.
Yeah. What, the onesie? That's all.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the quarterback list.
That's all the time.
He left out Greg.
I thought I was like, man, that's all you need is a onesie to just turn. I think there's a lot of people that could probably make that happen for you. All right, to the text line we go. Brandon chiming in. A lot of you chiming in on the make or break games. He says, for LSU, beating Alabama gives them a huge edge in the standings and playoff conversation. So he has Alabama being LSU's make or break game. And then for Florida, he says Texas because it's a major playoff contender and a direct competitor for one of the top 2 SEC spots. If Florida wants to prove they're back in the hunt, they have to win that one because it is at home. Okay. Let's see. Well, Deacon, you're texting in. I thought you said you were working on a second Vanderbilt hole. I guess he said he's not doing that yet, so that's good. Let's see. Joseph chimes in. He says, to me, the make or break game is at home against Texas for Florida. First big game at home after 2 rough road games. Okay, so a lot of you thinking Florida, they need to. And Drake chimes in. We know he's a big Gator fan. He says, all right, guys, it's the Texas game.
See that?
Okay.
That's just
okay.
But you really think Florida's there? Now, if they lose close, cool. But I don't.
I think maybe they're saying that's the game where if Florida does win it, then they back. Yeah, then we're we're back kind of conversation. And okay, I can understand that. Let's see. Somebody says, could you recap who you had for Alabama and Auburn? So yeah, for Auburn we had Texas A&M, and for Alabama we had South Carolina. So hopefully that fills you in there. You can go check out the podcast if you want a more in-depth explanation. But that does it for us. We're back tomorrow at 6 a.m. McElroy and Kublik in the morning is next.